Welcome back.
It was a nice intro.
Welcome also to the people connected in streaming. This is the industrial view panel. We have Mr. Tsuneo Kita, chairman of Nikkei. We have Jessica Lessin, founder and editor-in-chief of The Information. Julian Reichelt, editor-in-chief of BILD Digital and chairman of BILD editorial offices. Andrew Ross Sorkin, editor-at-large, columnist, and founder of DealBook at the New York Times. And Robert Thomson, CEO at NewsCorp. All the questions for this panel come from journalism students at Columbia University and the University of Torino, some of which are here, and from readers of La Stampa. Maurizio Molinari collect all the questions from the readers of La Stampa. Let's start. I would like to introduce Tsuneo Kita. He has been a journalist for 46 years, covering the Japanese economy, and is now chairman and group CEO of Nikkei. The company issues the world's largest economic newspaper, the Nikkei, which has 2.7 million print and 500,000 digital paid subscribers. Not bad. His company shocked the world in the summer of 2015 by acquiring the Financial Times. The first question is for you. The first question are about all the students and readers ask about Google and Facebook. Let's start with Google and Facebook. The first question is, as more online advertising is concentrated within Google and Facebook control, how do you see journalism organization funding much of the work they do, especially high-cost investigation and foreign correspondence? And how important are subscription, events, and affiliate revenue to your cash flow?
Let me talk about the Japanese newspaper industry first. It's a little different from the West. The influence from Facebook and Google is smaller comparative to the West. As you introduced correctly, Nikkei issues 2.7 million copies a day and 550,000 online paid subscribers. The big chunk of revenue comes from subscriptions, about 60%. Advertisement accounts for less than 40%. For Nikkei, the digital advertisement is not large, and we do not feel our digital advertisement taken by Facebook and Google yet. Looking in the future, it is very perceivable that Facebook and Google, the platformers, will take advertisement from traditional media. But to counter that, we have to increase our readership. As traditional media, we have to continue to produce quality journalism and expand our audience space, and that the advertisement will follow. Lionel Barber just said that you need 2 sources for every scoop. This is extremely important for quality journalism. We have to continue to investigate the truth and deliver quality journalism. And if we continue that, that strengthens newspapers.
Thank you. My best compliment to Robert Thomson, that understand also Japanese. You don't need translation, any translation in the world.
No, I need it, I promise you.
Jessica Lessin. She is the editor-in-chief of The Information, which she founded in 2013, to write deeply reported articles about the technology industry that wouldn't be found elsewhere, correct? The question for you is this. There are, at the moment, 2 parallel trends which are making it particularly hard to survive in publishing. online advertising that is increasingly going to the twin powerhouses of digital media, Facebook and Google, and the real difficulty in making money on digital advertising. The information seems to have a big reader-supported business model. Which are the differences between the information and its competitor and us?
So our business model is really reflective of...
Yeah.
Well, you nailed it with our business model, because that is the difference. And we don't think of it as just how we make money. We think of our business model, subscription business, as how we make all decisions about our product and what we publish. And we charge $400 a year to business professionals who follow the technology industry closely. And so we aim to write journalism worthy of that. And so because of that business model, we hire journalists who are capable of the kind of in-depth reporting that is equivalent to that value. We design our product to have the kinds of features that help our subscribers get value out of commenting and community, conference calls, etc. So I've been encouraged. There's been a lot of discussion about subscription businesses at this event. And for us, I think every day we think about that not just as how we get paid, but how we prioritize and the bar that we live up to.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Julian Reichelt is a German journalist, editor-in-chief of BILD Digital and chairman of BILD's editorial office. BILD Zeitung, which means literally picture newspaper, correct? Picture newspaper, is a popular German tabloid published by Axel Springer based in Berlin. I would like to ask you, should media companies look for a peaceful coexistence with Facebook and Google?
Well, I think there is hardly a way around it, because I don't really see that we would have the measures to declare war on Facebook and Google. So I wouldn't really know, what the alternative is, especially since with Facebook to many, especially younger readers and users, is the internet. And when I look at our audience that is below the age of 25, no one of them it would seem strange to them to enter www.something.something into a browser. That is almost as weird to them as walking into a newsstand. So I think that we have to get the most out of Facebook and make clear demands. When we as BILD and Axel Springer deal with Facebook, when we signed up for instant articles, we made the demand that there at some point has to be a paid content, a sign-in option inside Facebook. That is obviously very, very difficult to get to, but that is our position, that we will not remain on a platform without a path to monetization and to paying for journalism. I think that should be our path, and not any kind of war rhetoric when it comes to these platforms.
Thank you. Andrew Ross Sorkin is a columnist for the New York Times and the founder and editor-at-large of DealBooks, an online daily financial report published by the Times, the New York Times, that is started in 2001. He is also author of the award-winning business book, Too Big to Fail, a really famous book, which chronicled the events of the 2008 crisis on Wall Street and became an HBO movie in 2011. Two questions for you. Are Facebook and Google media companies, or are they just technology platforms? And the second one, if it's possible to have a relationship with them.
Well, first let me start by saying, as Lionel had mentioned about journalists in their Twitter bios, my opinions are my own, so these may not represent the organization. I just think there should be a little bit of a reset about the conversation about what Facebook and Google are and how that presents itself. I do believe they are media companies. They are also platforms, and I'm not so sure that they're our friends. And I think that that there has to be a little bit of a recognition about that piece of it. And what I mean by that is Google and Facebook have presented themselves as partners to the newspaper industry. But when one partner has their hands around the neck of the other partner, I'm not sure that's a partnership. I've covered business for 20 years. The most important thing that the most important quality of any partnership is trust. And there is politely a deficit trust right now between both the newspaper publishers, Facebook and Google, more so Facebook than Google. It's worth noting there's a distinction between how I think the industry looks at it. And mind you, this distinction about trust about Google and Facebook isn't just coming from the newspaper industry, it's coming from the other side, which is, I just got back from Cannes. The advertisers have the same distrust. And I don't think that that whole model is going to work for them nor for us until and if we actually find a way to create that trust and to create a real partnership. I'd like to be hopeful. I'm a professional skeptic, given that I'm a journalist. But as Mark said, perhaps there's a window, and maybe we can take advantage of it.
Last but not least, Robert Thomson. Robert started as a journalist. He was the editor-in-chief of the US edition of the Financial Times. Then he edited the Times of London. He was the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal, and now he is chief executive officer of NewsCorp in New York, which has global operation across a range of media since 2013. Robert, should media company look for a peaceful coexistence with Facebook and Google or not?
Well, as Andrew implied, it's certainly not peaceful, and for many media companies it has been existential. Now, before I say what I'm about to say, I should preface my comment with, look, Google and Facebook do extraordinarily positive things in terms of networking, in terms of access to information. I should also preface my comments by saying we're deep in dialogue with Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg and I, about a subscription mechanic, and we are a complainant in Brussels against Google. One of the few media companies, and my question for the media companies in this room is why aren't more people involved in that action? Because when you look at the two companies, Google commodified content and then it flowed off into the Facebook news stream. And if we were creating Google News now and we wanted to be honest about provenance, you would use the masthead of a great paper like La Stampa or whatever, and you would inculcate in users a sense of pride, provenance, reliability, trust. You'd enhance a brand rather than destroy a brand, which is frankly what Google did. And it's more than that. They have, their cost of content is lawyers, lobbyists, and lolly. Lolly is a British term meaning money, sort of handouts, right? And so, you know, there's this fund and that fund, and that just does not excuse some of the nefarious practices that are allowed to take place. The cost of compliance should be proper compliance, should be around quality, it should be around reliability. And you look at something like piracy, right? Piracy is rampant, and quite a few of our businesses have been hurt by piracy on Google and YouTube. And if you own a pawn shop and you look out the window and you see a lady being robbed of her jewelry, and then the thief comes into the pawn shop. A pawn shop is a platform. The thief comes into the pawn shop. You know where the jewelry came from, and you accept that jewelry and make money from that jewelry. Well, you're complicit. Frankly, you're complicit in a crime, which is what piracy is. And so, less complicity, more compliance.
Andrew, would you like to add something?
I would do the other analogy that I use when I think about the relationship between Facebook, Google, and the media industry is rather than think about it as a partnership, unfortunately, I think what it's turned into is a bit of a landlord-tenant situation, right? They're the landlords, they own the shopping mall, and we've become the tenants, and they are squeezing us on the rent. The question is how that relationship can change, and to the extent that they are taking advantage of this industry and the challenges that it faces, what kind of leverage does the industry actually have to shift the dialogue, in truth?
I would argue, Andrew, Andrew, for your analogy, I'd argue move out, in the sense that, and I covered Facebook and Google as a tech reporter for more than a decade, and so I know these companies well in terms of how they operate and think, and they're very talented, very smart people building great products, but they don't care about the news industry. I mean, I take them at their word in wanting to partner because at some level they care, but at the end of the day they're not aligned in terms of what they're trying to do. They're trying to connect the entire world or make the world more open and accessible. And so I just wanted to add, as an industry, I think, you know, there's a cost to doing business with the platforms in terms of potentially losing leverage on monetization, but there's another cost, which is the opportunity cost of what, as an industry, we're not doing because we're distracted and frankly obsessed with trying to do business with them. So I'm not advocating not experimenting, but as publishers, we need to have our own path about the things that we do control and, you know, move to the other side of town, in your analogy.
Julian.
I agree with most things said here, especially with Jessica, that they probably do not care that much about the news industry. They are great, though, at pretending that they care deeply about the news industry. I went to F8 in San Jose this year, and they had this whole thing on fake news and how they want to help us. And my impression was that they want to basically distract us from, you know, attacking stuff like paid content and sign-in and subscription models within the Facebook universe, because we were all concerned about fake news now, and we want to be friends with Facebook, so now we, you know, have a joint topic, and, you know, we talk about that and completely lose sight of what's important to our industry. I want to add, though, something that I think is also important for us to consider, that it's not only about Facebook's strength, or that Facebook's strength also comes from our weakness and our failures of the past. Because if we look at their most successful news product, Instant Article, it's an article that opens fast. Our whole industry didn't see that coming, that people want an article that opens fast. Our whole industry failed to create a mobile article that opens fast. It's not rocket science, it's not flying to the moon or something. It's an article that opens when you click on it on a subway. And we failed to deliver that to our users. And Facebook, out of their own interest, and they have every right to have their own interest, I believe, said, all right, we're going to create that because it's a great experience and we want to keep people in our universe. And they just delivered the better product than we, as still a very powerful and potent industry, were able to deliver. So if we talk about how can we exist or coexist with Facebook, my answer would be we have to deliver products that we know our users and readers want before Facebook does it for us.
And we have the technology available to do that. So the ability for instant articles is something that even could be innovated somewhere, but great engineers that we can all hire can do that.
Robert, yeah. What do you think about the instant articles, for example?
We talk about this concept of a walled garden, right? You imagine this beautiful brick wall, kind of rustic, and this garden with flowers and trees and very bucolic setting. Well, this is not a walled garden, right? A walled garden is meant to keep people out. The platform's walled garden is to keep people in. The wall, right, is 50 feet high. It's got razor wire on top. There's a moat there, and there are crocodiles in the moat. That's what the walled garden is, in a content conceptual sense.
Mr. Kita?
I cannot say. I don't think there's a necessity to think of Facebook and Google as an enemy or a friend. They've only been in the world for 10 years. You think of how much digital innovation has happened in the last 10 years, and think of what technological innovation could happen in the next 10 years. The speed of communication will go to 5G, image will go up to 4K. There will be new ways of delivering your news. Will Facebook continue to have the same influence 10 years from now? I'm a little skeptical. I'm sure that something else will come out. In such a disrupted age, traditional media has quality journalism. If we team up with the new technologies, I'm very optimistic that we can survive.
What do you think about Facebook in 10 years?
Facebook in 10 years.
Facebook in 10 years. I think it's going to vary country by country. It's different in Japan to the US, different in the US to Australia to a certain extent. They're clearly going through transition. I think Jessica's right. You have to look at what are the core motivating elements of Facebook. It isn't journalistic provenance, but they are. You know, how much are they teenagers going through a period of maturation and where they have a much more coherent sense of social responsibility? And obviously the fake news scandal has scared them actually and motivated them up to a point. But the question is it motivation up to the point of damage limitation, or is it motivation to the point of genuine introspection and a reconsideration of role?
I just wanted to add, you know, by the way, I don't want to move out of the neighborhood just yet. I just want to be clear, because I am going to be somewhat hopeful. But where I was going to go with this is, I ultimately think we talked about the trust deficit that exists between Facebook and the news industry, if you will, but also the trust deficit that exists with the advertising community. I actually think it's the advertising community that may ultimately help the news industry, which is to say that they're going to have to fix the trust issue with the advertisers. And I think as part of that, there's the potential that they may churn in terms of this maturing idea that you're talking about with us.
Advertising agencies have been complicit in this as well. And there is nothing worse than a trendy CMO who wants to be cutting edge and hang out at Sundance. And you know, these people are so susceptible to that Silicon Valley sensibility, and they're so contemptuous of actual client needs. And so not only the agencies but the advertisers have to be more diligent and more stringent.
Well, I think that there certainly is a trust deficit between the news industry and Facebook. But when I look at billions of people outside the news industry, I don't really see that trust deficit. That's why I'm more, I'm not that pessimistic for Facebook for the future, because when I look at them, I see that a number of people as large as China trust them with, you know, the most valuable thing they have, with all the data and basically with their lives, with the pictures of their children and all that. And when I look at people outside the news business, and I think that is something we have to acknowledge instead of complaining to come up with answers, that for many, many people in the world, Facebook delivers. You know, they deliver information in environments where people don't have information, where they don't have access to printed newspapers, in very anti-democratic environments. When when I live in Zimbabwe, why would I trust my government more than Facebook? I think Facebook is if nothing comes between them and the plan they're following or the way they are going, Facebook has a good chance of becoming the next state actor in many areas of the world, because there are billions of people where governments don't deliver. They don't give you internet access, and Facebook puts a drone over you and suddenly you have internet access, and you don't have a chance to connect with other people because your government doesn't want you to connect. Suddenly Facebook, you know, delivers that. No matter what we think about that, that is something we should acknowledge. And I think when I go to Evade and when I look at at their new innovations and try to, you know, assume where they are heading, I think they are, I know it sounds a lot like world dominance or something, but they are the people who deliver for billions of people in the world who do not trust governments. And so I would see a much bigger role for Facebook in the future. And again, I think we're not going to be successful complaining about that. I think we, you know, need to build the best products next to Facebook.
Whose responsibility, when it comes to fake news then?
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is it ultimately to police this? Is it Facebook's? Are we, in general, all at fault? I mean, one of the things I think that's fascinating about the last decade is that everybody in this room has become their own reporter, right? We all will read 3 different versions of every article as we search for our own version of the truth. And by the way, we seem to be happy, or at least accepting of an article that may not be credible, just to get one piece of gossip on one end, and then we'll track it down over here, and then maybe we'll find our way, hopefully, to the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. But but that's then on us.
I believe much of it is on us. I mean, if I look at in the German news environment, but also in the US news environment, how much reporting was there on, and I agree, we shouldn't call it news. It's not fake news, it's propaganda and disinformation. How much reporting was there on, especially Russian disinformation, propaganda, before the Trump election, like months before the Trump election? Basically zero. How much was it ignored in the country where I'm from, where we see heavy amounts of Russian propaganda and disinformation? Zero. If you reported on that, you were called by people from within the news anti-Russian and all that. We completely missed that until it was clear that it led to Trump, and we were all very unhappy, and then we started complaining about Russian disinformation. But the media didn't do its job there, and those who did were ignored. So of course it's our, I mean, Facebook is a publisher in some way, but Facebook has I believe only a fake interest in fighting it, and we have a professional interest in fighting fake news. So we should take it on us, and we were the ones who didn't report on Russian meddling in, for example, the US elections for 2 years, although it was very clear what was going on, and although it was very clear what Russia today is, that it's not, you know, a freedom of the press organization, and that it's not media, but it's a psyops organization. But we treated them like a normal news organization.
Just one point about where Facebook is headed in 10 years, or if the future is bright, that I think we should keep in mind. I do take, the company is starting to outline a new mission in some ways around community and groups. And I believe that is very genuine. And that raises interesting questions for us about how to play in that. But to your point, which I think is excellent, and sort of gets to just having different long-term objectives, I think they're well on their way to becoming a very important force through that. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot more out of them on that narrative of community.
Yeah, Robert, the last.
One final point on Google, Facebook. At heart, what you're talking about are algorithms. And at the moment, I have algorithm angst. Because algorithms are perceived to be this scientific, objective, somehow they're throwing up the content from parameters that you've set. The new skew in algorithms is immense, and the potential censorship in algorithms is immense. And so when people talk about AI, you have to make a distinction between artificial intelligence and the artifice of intelligence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a lot of questions from students and readers. For Mr. Kita, you are chairman of Nikkei. When you became the new owner of the Financial Times, you said, reporters wish to write what they want to write and hate interference from the outside, as do I. How do you think you can ensure real impartiality and no intrusion?
On editorial independence, I'm sure that every one of you here thinks of it often. For us, we've continued to tell the FT that the FT is FT, Nikkei is Nikkei. And we have promised editorial independence many times. And to ensure the editorial independence, we do have to have healthy management, a healthy business model as a newspaper. We've continued to tell the FT we want them to look in the long term and grow in the long term, not focus on short-term profits. We have told them we don't need dividends for the foreseeable future, at least 3 years. Any profit that comes from your business, I've told them we want you to reinvest in the business and grow. And for the Nikkei to have that luxury, as Nikkei, we have to have a stable management. And it is a reality that print newspaper is declining slowly. To counter that, we have been expanding online the digital version of the Nikkei. And through the stability of the Nikkei management, we can ensure editorial independence for the FT.
Thank you. Jessica, how important are for your business events and also comments?
From a revenue standpoint, not...
This is a question from Columbia University students.
From a revenue standpoint, events are not at all significant because we don't charge for them, we make them part of being a subscriber. And so we really think of them as a way to build community, a way for our subscribers to meet each other and get expertise, and a way to get great content. But when I started the information and looked at what the business models around many news startups, I felt they were way too dependent on events and conferences and on a small number of people paying thousands and thousands of dollars. And I explicitly do not want to be in that business. I think it's not as scalable a business, it's not as aligned with great journalism. So we really use events to build community. And that's how we think of comments as well. Many news organizations have shied away from comments because they're very challenging to police. Because we're a subscription business and people have their identities attached to their comments, we're actually leaning into them. So we are thinking of many new ways to surface the great content that's in our comments section throughout our site. We also have a Slack team for information subscribers where people can discuss the news of the day amongst themselves. And we do conference calls for subscribers as well. And that's really part of thinking of our product being our expertise as well as our articles and being able to distribute that in lots of ways.
Thank you. For Julian, a question from a student of the University of Turin. They asked you, often in Europe we search for inspiration looking at experiences from across the ocean, US experiences. Are there European models worth looking at?
Yes, newspapers. Newspapers. I think when it comes to innovation and technology, the truth is lots of it really comes from the US. When it comes to the habit of reading a newspaper, of subscribing to a newspaper, of having a newspaper on the very local level, of building communities around newspapers, of being very passionate about newspapers, of reading more than one newspaper per day. That's a very European thing. And if I look at the newspaper landscape in the US and compare it to the newspaper landscape in Europe and especially in Germany, that is something that has carried newspapers here in Europe and in Germany into the 21st century. In Germany, parents will pass on their subscription to children when they die. There's an option, a box that you can check that you want to pass on your subscription, and it's a strong part of German and European identity. So, and I think it's the challenge for us is to combine that tradition of reading and that tradition of trusting journalism with new technology.
Thank you. Andrew, let's talk about digital skills in the newsroom. Often in the newsroom there are limited digital skills. Where can the resources come from to invest on skilled digital new professionals like data journalists, web graphic designer, and so on?
I think there's two things going on, actually three things I'd mention. One that's just worth noting is I think obviously we have to do a better job internally training people. But I think the other piece of it is, I think the traditional path with which people make their way to a newsroom is changing. The idea that someone's going to go to school and then go to journalism school, check the box, and become a journalist, I think is not, especially in an environment where we're trying to find the most unique voices. And so I think I think we are now finding oftentimes that we're hiring people from all sorts of different places with all sorts of different backgrounds. And so we might be going to look for filmmakers who've made documentaries. We might actually be going into the creative spaces, ad agencies even, and moving some of those people over. I used to work with a guy named Nick Bilton, who now works at Vanity Fair, who started as a graphic designer and now is a journalist. I mean, a writing journalist. Our best legal writer at the New York Times, who covers the Supreme Court, was actually our lawyer for the New York Times before. So I just think in terms of the natural progression of where all these people come from, it's going to be different. But it does raise one important point, and Lionel mentioned it briefly earlier, which is we've all talked about this business in a very theoretical sense, and the newspaper business to some degree is a bit of a factory, but it is really a human business, and especially as we keep talking about the importance of story, it's a talent business. It ultimately is a talent business. And you have to nurture that talent, and you have to handhold that talent, and that's a very hard thing to do. And it's very hard to put on a spreadsheet what it means, what the relationship between a writer and an editor really is about. And I think that despite all the numbers and challenges that we face, the biggest challenge is always still finding the right talent.
For Robert, a question from a reader. The reductions of sales in the print newspapers has been the reality for years now. What should be done? Second the process in an active way, moving human resources and finances to digital, or should they try to resist?
We'll obviously have to think about the best use of resources, but just to talk about newspapers for one moment, I think it's important to remember that fatalism is fatal. And if people are constantly negative, then you are driving your media organisation, your masthead, into an early grave. And you look at the relative strengths of print. For example, there's this great debate in the digital world whether an ad that is 50% viewable is being viewed. And it sort of whizzed by and it started rolling even before you saw it, but that counts as a view. Every newspaper ad is by definition at least 100% viewable. And secondly, you think about how people interact with digital media. You've got 7 screens open, you're texting, you're this thing, depending on how many phones you have, you might have 17 screens open. And so by definition, your level of concentration is diminished digitally. Whereas the only thing you can do in terms of multitasking while reading a newspaper is have a cup of coffee.
For you also the same question of Julian. Can you suggest us some models, some experiences from Europe? If you can suggest us something to look at in Europe as a model.
As a model?
As a model.
Yeah, yeah.
As a model.
Just for newspapers?
Yeah.
So I'm reluctant to generalise because I think what we're learning today is that in each country and in each region, markets really are different. And one of the things that I find most stunning, and I think that shows you that there's digital dysfunctionality, is that imagine 10 of us, right? We'll pick Birmingham in the UK, a big city, thriving city, great industrial city, 2 football clubs, 2 big ones. And you would think, let's get 20 smart people together and do community news, we'll do the courts, the police rounds, the local business, the local sport. Why hasn't that taken off, not only in the UK, but in many, many countries? And it tells you that the value of content is mispriced because that website has no distribution costs, none of these wonderful paper rolls, none of the trucks, none of the things that we're all proud of as part of the newspaper industry, but are costly. And so in each country, wherever it is in Europe, ending the mispricing of content is crucial to allow true digital creativity to flow.
Thank you. Mr. Kita, Nikkei invests a lot in digital development. Why do you do this, and how will innovation change newspapers?
Digital technology is crucial, is a crucial asset for news organizations. Readers have different needs. Some people want short articles. Some people want deep, long articles. Some people want it immediately. Some people are happy having it slower. There's various needs of readers. And to cater to each one of those needs, we need the technology. We have to continue to be a technology media. And that's why we invest. We continue to look for the cutting-edge, latest technology. In that sense, when we look at the Financial Times, they're very advanced in terms of digital technology, way ahead of us. By partnering with the FT, we have managed to obtain a lot of technology. They teach us so much in terms of digital innovation. And together, we're creating new products. And we're trying to create a new form of journalism. What we're best at Nikkei is information about Asia, business information about Asia, to deliver that in English to the world. And teaming up with the FT is accelerating this strategy. So we are talking about how to make a new product, basically based around data of Asian companies. We're trying to create a product, the Nikkei and FT together, to sell data to clients around the world, to readers around the world. And for that, we need the latest technology.
Thank you. Jessica, a question from a reader. It said, I am a 75-year-old reader of La Stampa. I left the paper edition 2 years ago in favor of the digital edition. I imagine a future of only digital newspapers with a real-time news flow and a daily edition which should focus mainly on comments, opinions, and news analysis, with special attention to culture, health, books, and travel, and which shouldn't only inform but also explain. What do you think? Can this recipe work?
I think that sounds like a complicated recipe, and I believe that the future in the news business is being indispensable to some group of loyal readers, and that can be a small group or it can be a large group. But rather than try and do a little bit of everything, I think publishers and journalists need to focus on what they can excel at. And I don't think, at The Information, we publish around 2 articles a day. We are incredibly low volume. Someone joked earlier that we're the most expensive per article cost on the market. But I think what that means is we hold those articles to a very high bar, and that's valuable to our subscribers because they aren't looking to us for everything else because they're getting that in a million ways. So this is a comment many have mentioned earlier, but that original, indispensable perspective, for us it's covering the business world through the lens of technology. That's the key ingredient more than a particular recipe, I believe.
Do you like this recipe? What do you think?
I think what Jessica does is fantastic, frankly. And I read it, and there's a lot written about technology, and I try to read as much as I can, because I obviously have a vested interest. But if you're in the quantity business, it's a volume business. It's turning up the volume. If you're in the quality business, you're in the value business. And that's the distinction that people have to understand.
I also think, for those of us in the volume business, historically, the quality volume business, one of the great lessons, I think, of the past couple of years, given the rise of social media and how people are accessing our news, the ability to surface the news, meaning to surface the stories, is actually more challenging than people expect. So if you're publishing 60 stories a day, it's very challenging to properly market every story, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things you're seeing everybody do, again, is try to go upstream with more high-quality stories, and to some degree less.
I think it's very interesting where thought you might be going with that, Andrew, is also with so much news, you need to personalize it and get it to the right people. There's a sentiment in the industry that we need to be where our readers are. And while I don't disagree with that, I think it's more important that we be so good that our readers come to us, and that brand can absolutely exist in today's day and age. And while some people may not be typing in www, we are still building relationships with brands. For the information, we email out our stories, so our subscribers are letting us into their inbox. And so one solution to the fact that it's hard for us to fish for the right reader is for us to build a kind of brand where those readers will still come to us.
Obviously, editors should have empathy, right? And it's kind of glib to say we should be where our readers are. It would be kind of weird to be anywhere else. But a great editor, she or he has a sense of anticipation of where readers want to go next, or where you can take them, delight them, surprise them. So it's not just pandering, it's anticipating.
Julian, another question for you. If the majority of readers access news through their mobile devices, how does this shape the way journalists write and report the news? Do stories become oversimplified to simply hook the readers?
Well, obviously that is something that that does happen, and that happens increasingly. For us, it's coming from the tabloid business. It's something we've always done, and we're very good at. And we always lived with the reality that if you overdo it, your brand will lose credibility and people will turn away from you. If you look at the first edition of BILD, which came out 65 years ago, not as old as last number, but 65 years ago, in 2 days, it looks like Instagram. You know, headlines are, you know, less than 140 characters in a tabloid environment where you try to, and we have a very small portion of subscriptions, like 75,000 out of a circulation of 1.5 million. So for us, the business still is to attract people at the newsstand and not to disappoint them. So I think that is comparable to what is happening in that high-intensity environment of social media, where you have to attract attention without then disappointing people. And what we see is that many of our competitors who are new to that business do disappoint their readers and turn them away. There's one with the whole trend of clickbaiting. One of our competitors who tried to move into that area, famously, it was 2 years ago, used a story and put it on social media, and it said, it showed 4 rather famous German actors, and the headline was, one of these actors has cancer. So you know that obviously is a horrible example of clickbaiting, but it will just destroy your brand, trust in your brand, readership. So the truth is, for us, it's kind of an easy trend, because that's what we have done forever, and we're part inventing in our own market.
Thank you. Andrew, many millennials don't want to pay for subscription. They also have ways to bypass paywalls. Beyond social media, what is the next step to attract, grow, and retain young readership?
I think ultimately and I think we're doing it. I think we're training millennials. Millennials may not like to pay, but they do have something what's called FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think it's our job every day to consistently make the reader's jaw drop. That's really what this is about, so that you keep coming back. So whether it's, and Donald Trump is helping us with this, the jaw-dropping part. I still didn't get a laugh, it's okay. The piece that I was going to suggest is, you're effectively trying to create a moment, right? And so if you can create enough of these moments, whether it's our coverage of Comey, or whether it's Mike Isaac breaking this Uber news this morning. By the way, who's been very good at this? Where's Jeff Bezos? The Washington Post has been terrific. I subscribed. He actually trained me effectively to subscribe to the Washington Post, because I kept seeing their stories on social media. I kept having FOMO. I was missing out on the story, And Jeff, I used my Prime subscription. I don't know where Jeff went. Anyway, so I got the discount. But the point is that you effectively, we have to be creating the equivalent of Game of Thrones every single day. By the way, we don't even have to do it every single day. We just have to do it enough that you keep coming back to make sure you didn't miss it.
There's also, there's some evidence, a lot of evidence, millennials do pay for news, actually. So there was a recent study that came out maybe a couple weeks ago, and it was even about 30%. You know, it was much higher than what I thought, even anecdotally, and what we see at The Information, where we have a big cohort of subscribers who are up-and-coming entrepreneurs in their 20s. So as an industry, I don't think we should go in with that assumption. The same was true as a publication based in Silicon Valley. People thought, you know, people will never pay for that. They're the techies who can figure out how to bypass anything with cookies. But again, because for most people, the calculus to pay or not is this valuable? Is this something I don't want to miss out on? And millennials are paying, and I think they'll pay a lot more.
Thank you. A very simple question from a reader for Robert Thomson. What is the business model for the future?
What is the business?
The business model for the future.
How long do we have?
We have half an hour.
We have half an hour. Right? It's not long enough. Well, clearly, we all have, we who have mastheads have a portfolio, and we have to have a portfolio approach and be able to, one, introduce more, have a funnel. We call it the funnel of love, where people will sample content, they'll come in, it's valuable to them. But at the same time, you can't do that to the exclusion of one or the other platforms, right? You can't just focus on print or mobile or whatever. But it's important that all of our journalists and all of our business teams understand that they're on a journey, right? And we are custodians. We are custodians of a great tradition. La Stampa is 150 years old. And we have to approach this challenge with the sense of responsibility of a custodian. And that means being creative, and that means being flexible. And one of the problems you have sometimes when you talk to person X or person Y about flexibility, they say, well, does that mean we're going to compromise? No, you have to be flexible in everything but your principles. And the business model of the future will be determined by companies that are creative and are flexible, but still understand the value of their values.
Thank you. We have time for one last short question for everybody. There is a lot of talking about fake news spread by social media. But is there also a problem of credibility and loss of trust in legacy media?
When we talk about fake news, is that I don't think it's because traditional media went wrong. But can we really call fake news news? That's certainly not news. Because we have new tools, especially social media, more and more people can use these tools like toys to project information, fake news. I don't think it's because it's because traditional media has lost its strength or lost its integrity. You can only call news if it's credible. Yes, fake news will not survive.
Thank you. Jessica?
On the credibility subject, I think we have a great challenge and opportunity in that we build our credibility with every article that we publish as an industry. And so that means we can reinforce it on a regular basis and earn it. It also means we can blow it very quickly. And so I think, I can't think of that many other products or brands that do that as much. So wherever that level is today, and I'm sure it's low, I think we have to continue to raise the bar and earn it. And the good news is we have a lot of opportunities to do that. And the bad news is we have a lot of opportunities to screw it up.
Thank you. Julian.
Well, I don't think that there's less credibility in legacy media, which is a horrible term. I think what we're seeing is a very realistic reevaluation of the credibility we always had. Because what we haven't acknowledged for decades as an industry is that we basically had a monopoly when it came to distributing news and opinion and all that. And it was protected by what we're seeing here, by a lot of staff, a lot of very labor-intensive then printing and distribution. So you needed to invest millions to get into that business, and no one did. So being a very vain profession, we always thought, we see those huge numbers because we're so witty and smart and brilliant, and we obviously were, but there was a part of people who bought those products because there wasn't anything else. So the moment the smartphone came and now everyone has a global mechanism of distributing news and everything that person wants to distribute, we see our reach and circulations and all that dropping, possibly because people who bought us and consumed us now found a way around us. And I think what many people were, and that is something that we now perceive as mistrust or lack of credibility, that many people just disliked about the media is that we gave them a product and it was a one-way street. And whenever they tried to communicate with us, it didn't really happen. And a letter from your reader, except that the FT has always done a brilliant job with that, was basically on the billboard in the company, and people were laughing about it. And our industry didn't really respect or didn't really have a conversation with its readers until social media came. And now, that to me is the biggest trend of our news era, that a one-way conversation has turned into a two-way conversation. And where you engage in that, media is very successful. Where you distribute through social media and build community, new media is very successful. And newspapers have to find a way to, to follow that. You can't just dump a paper in front of a person and demand that he believes everything you say and accept your views. You have to be accessible and open and do what we do on social media, and then I think we will see very similar credibility and very similar trust.
Andrew.
I think it's all about trust. We've complained all day, or at least I have, about Facebook and Google and that deficit of trust. I think the deficit of trust with us is real too, and I think it's something that ultimately we have to fix. I think there's enormous loyalty among a remarkable amount of readers of our paper and others, and that trust is real. But I think it has to extend beyond that, and I think we have to find a way. Lydia talked about it before in terms of what it means to communities in a meaningful way. And the last piece I would say is anybody here who's ever been written about, if you've ever been written about, I am sure there's at least a sentence or two in an article that's been written about you that you didn't just wince at, but you said, that's kind of wrong. And I think it's on us to actually make sure it's right.
Robert?
Unfortunately, I agree with Andrew. In a sense, I think the whole fake news debate is fake. Because it involves fakeness, I'll make up a number. There's been fake news for 5,327 years. And the truth is we're confronting it because of a political event that people find hard to understand last year. A bit like some Elvis fans find it hard to understand that obesity contributed to his death. And so the truth is that if a headline is wrong and a story is right, is that fake? If a headline is right and a story, to Andrew's point, has 3 factual errors, is that fake? We have an opportunity in the midst of this debate, and there is a debate, as traditional mastheads to make a virtue of our veracity.
Thank you. Now it's time for each of you to indicate your priority for the future of newspaper in a very short sentence, in less than a tweet. Mine is this: we have to focus on original, necessary and substantial content. Fewer editors, more reporters, and much more relevance. It's your turn.
What's important for newspapers is to answer what our readers' needs. We have to continue to produce quality journalism, first of all, and to cater to the needs. We must not be bound by the status quo. We should challenge and accept technologies. We should be open to teaming with Facebook and Google. We are talking about the future of newspapers. From my perspective, we have to talk about the future of the news media, not just the newspaper. Yes.
Jessica Lessin.
Mine is to create journalism worth paying for, and I distinguish between, that's not charge for journalism. I think it's more the mentality that has to go into it. Even if because of your business and reality you don't believe you can charge today, I think we all have to go into it with what we could charge for, because even if we're not asking readers to pay with their wallets today, they're paying with their time and attention, and that's the big battle, you know, competing with Instagram or whatever else is on their phone. So that would be mine.
Well, to me it would be tell stories fearlessly and better than anyone else, because that's our business and that's what we do best, while embracing new technologies and not fearing them, and never lose confidence in demanding money for what we do.
Andrew?
I would just say move faster, get on with it. I think this is an industry that historically has been very hesitant to make the changes that it knows should be made. If you see something that you think is going to happen, if you know the organization is going to be at a particular place 5 years from now, don't wait 5 years, do it now. I think Jeff's a great example of something that's happened in the course of 2 years. He has remarkably turned that organization around, and I think the digital upstarts and insurgents will come after us, traditional media, if we don't.
Finally, a tweet from Robert Thomson.
Be acutely aware of trends, but never be trendy. And always remember there is a premium for the premium.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody.